I'm Michael Kunze, and I'm a songwriter. But I've turned into a musical author, and the story of that development is also the story of the genesis, actually, of what I call the drama musical. And I welcome the opportunity to talk about it, because I think my way to that kind of stage musical writing is, for a lot of people, could be an example, and also I like to show that, of course, I don't deny I have talent, but I think the reason I'm so successful is not so much my talent. A lot of people have talent. I can say I think I work a little bit harder than most of the people. And part of that harder work is getting to know what the musical is all about, and what this art form demands. And this is what I will talk about, but I had the good luck to build this kind of work on a ground. Only a seed had to come that a plant grows. And actually, this is what I want to tell. I want to tell you about the soil which was laid by my former experience, then the seed that I got basically from American and English colleagues, and finally the plant that grew out of it. But it is not just, a plant that could grow anywhere. It is something very European, and I would even say something very German. Nevertheless, I hope, of course, that it will influence other creativity in other countries as well. Yes, I started out as a songwriter, like Kim already mentioned. Actually, for my whole life, I was a songwriter, because when I was a teenager of 14 years old, I started to write songs. And I started, of course, that was a rock and roll time. And I wanted to write songs that are as good as Jailhouse Rock, but I think I never succeeded, because I tried to do it in German, and at that time we didn't have the singers to do it. But when I went to high school, I kept writing songs, and I formed a group of singers in the style of the Kingston Trio, and to have someone to sing my songs. And we were optimistic enough, like all teenagers, to do a demo recording and send it out. And of course, it was turned down by all the publishers and record companies. But we did some appearances, and all of a sudden I received a letter from one of the publishers who said, well, I'm not interested in the group, but who wrote the lyrics. And I was invited to Berlin, to that publisher, who at that time was a very important pop producer as well. And he asked me if I would like to write lyrics for his composers. At that time, I have to say, I composed my melodies. I felt like a songwriter. I wrote what we called protest songs. It was against everything. And it was for a world of peace and love. But I soon learned, that was my very first impression, There are composers like Sand, but there are not enough lyricists. So I gave up composing myself, and I concentrated on writing lyrics. So this publisher offered me something incredible, 200 Deutschmarks a month, if I give him all the lyrics I write. And I thought, well, that can't be true, because I still was a student going to school, but I did so. And every now and then, actually one of the songs was recorded. And when I went to law school, I already got a little money from our Authors Society, GEMA, and I could finance my studies from that. And I never in a moment thought I would become a lawyer. You know, I always wanted to be a lyricist, and so I started to do this more professionally. And when my studies ended with an exam, I left university and concentrated on doing this as a profession. But I soon discovered that my lyrics were not recorded the way I wanted them to be recorded. And that's how I became a creative producer. I went to the studio myself, and I found my own artists, and I started to produce. And this developed nicely, and in that time, it was in the 70s, I had a lot of success with a lot of artists. And I ended up being a slave for the record companies, because I was living in the studio, basically. I was spending my nights in the studio, and I was writing my lyrics in the studio. And that was not what I intended to do. I always wanted to be a writer. I didn't want to be a businessman sitting in a studio. And also, to be quite honest, the talent I had in the studio was less than satisfying to me. I found out, you know, most of the singers I had in the studio, they had some talent, but usually after the first chart hit, they were not manageable anymore. And they became very lazy. You know, they made a lot of money. All of these artists, they came out of nowhere, because I usually picked them up in some, you know, some joint where they sang, and I made a hit record with them, and from then on they got 5,000 or 10,000 a night, you know. And when I called them to the studio to do a recording, they came in, and after half an hour they looked at their watch and wanted to leave again. And actually every guitar player in the studio was devoting more time, talent, and energy in the recording than the singer. And I really was fed up with it in the end.